What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, last week we previewed the Independents and Group of Five. This week we've got the ACC Atlantic, working our way through the Power Five conferences and divisions. So we will be previewing Clemson, NC State, Wake Forest, Florida State, Boston College, Louisville, and Syracuse this week. And Daniel, I'm excited we've made it here. We are to the Power Five, and we get to pick some games, pick some overs and unders, talk through teams we like, teams we don't like. I'll mention at least one team that I was very wrong about last year, but excited to be here in the ACC. One of my favorite conferences because of I'll say parity last year and usually parity outside of Clemson.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And this really does feel like it's big time now that we're starting this. Nothing against the Independents and the Group of Five, but when I mentioned it to my wife that we were covering the ACC tonight, she's like, "Oh, so this is like happening for this year, like predictions." Like, yeah, these other ones are predictions too, but this is it just feels more real. This is a bigger conference, and it's a Power Five conference. It's got a national contender in Clemson, and it's going to be exciting to kind of get through. There's some of these teams that are interesting that are really kind of having make or break years. Maybe some decisions on coaches this year. They might have their foot in the door and need to kind of make their way in, or is Clemson going to just shut them all out and kind of get back to being Clemson?
Well, let's start at the top there. So we're going to go in order of win total. So let's start with the Clemson Tigers coming off of a 10-3 season. Win total set at 10.5 for 2022. So Daniel, let's kick it off with a big team hoping to have a bounce back here. Where are you going with the Tigers?
Yeah, 10.5. I feel like it's a good number, especially based off of how their offense performed last year. And if we're expecting this to be the same offense, I think it's a phenomenal number because I do think that they are in danger of only winning 10 games. I have high expectations for Clemson as far as getting something fixed. I credit that mostly to Cade Klubnik coming in at quarterback and being at worst a backup who is pushing DJ Uiagalelei to be the best quarterback he can be. And on the flip side, he could end up just taking the job and being, the next high-end starter for the Clemson Tigers. Yes, they probably aren't going to have another Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson come through because those are generational talents, but there's no reason a five-star from last year or from this year or a five-star from 2 years ago can't up their game and be way more efficient than they were. They ranked in last in a lot of offensive categories last year in the ACC. I think Will Shipley being healthy for the whole year is going to be important. I think he's their biggest playmaker on offense. I think they're going to have to use him in the pass game a bunch. They're going to have to get some help for that offensive line. We're going to see if they can kind of grow under, new coordinators. This is going to be a big year for Clemson in that aspect of offensive and defensive coordinators being replaced. I looking forward to watching this defensive line because I think regardless of who's coaching them, this is going to be hands down one of the best defensive lines in the country, if not the best. It's short list with Brian Breezy at D tackle, Miles Murphy outside. They're going to be tough to move. Trenton Simpson in the middle of this defense, 5-star. He is going to be just a stud among studs. You look at the schedule, they have that fun opening game against Georgia Tech on Labor Day. So they're going to have that kind of showcase time to really just kind of, I think, probably pummel Georgia Tech and really get a lot of people feeling good about Clemson early because they'll probably see them score a bunch of points early. Then they play Furman and Louisiana Tech. So that should just be kind of them rolling. I don't think Wake Forest is going to stop them offensively either. That might be their first defensive test, though, trying to stop them. But I go through this schedule, and I only see Notre Dame and potentially Miami as losable games on this schedule. So I'm going over. I think that they have a good chance of going 12-0. I do think this team's flawed enough where they're going to lose one game. So it's either going to be, Notre Dame, It could be South Carolina. It could be South Carolina. Rivalry game. That would be kind of funny for it to happen at the end of the year after going undefeated. But it's one of those. It's one of those last 4 games minus Louisville. So Notre Dame, Miami, or South Carolina. But yeah, over. They're going to go 11-1 this year.
11-1. All right, I'm with you on the over here. So 10.5, I do think is a good number, but storylines, you got to replace both coordinators, as you mentioned, but I think an important thing that I think we'll see it once the season gets going, could be a really good thing. A really bad thing is the coaches they promoted from within, right? So, and it was pretty quickly that there was no coaching search. It was just, we got the guys here. They promoted from within for both coordinator positions. So on offense, Brandon Streeter, he's been with the program since 2015. So, this is a lot of continuity, even though it's a new coordinator. At quarterback, Dabo seems very confident in DJ, despite his performance last year. After the spring game, he was asked who the starting quarterback is, and he's like, it's DJ. He's done nothing to lose that spot. So, to your point, I think Kate Klubnik pushing him, I think is important just to make him better. Competition makes people better. It's good. Will Shipley, if he stays healthy, he was their best player in offense last year. He's one of the best offensive players in the country when healthy. They're going to need help at receiver. So this is something we mentioned going into the season last year. We called out that, hey, compared to the other top teams in the country, Clemson didn't have the dogs at receiver that you need to win a national championship. And they got a bunch of big body guys. They're missing that Hunter Renfrow. They're missing that slot guy. Now, they might get it this year in Brandon Spector. So he did not play last year because of some health issues. He played in 2020, but he is the true slot receiver they've been missing. So we'll see if he can step up. Offensive line, once again, has to improve. Again, something we talked about last year. Trevor Lawrence probably covered up for bad offensive line play for 3 years, and DJ didn't last year. So the offensive line got exposed from game 1. So Clemson has to be better on offense. The good thing is, this is a team that last year in offense was, literally they were 71st in SP plus. So, not like 71 out of 130 FBS teams. If they can get to a top 40 offense, again, I'm not saying top 10, I'm saying a top 40 offense, they might go 12-0. Because the defense is going to be ridiculous. I don't think losing Brent Venables is near as big of a deal because of the continuity they have on defense. You mentioned the defensive line should be one of, if not the best defensive line in the country with, Tyler Davis, Xavier Thomas, Miles Murphy, Brian Bresee, all back, of age at this point, seniors and juniors. So this should be similar to that 2018 defensive line Clemson had, where all those guys were veteran and it's their contract, their contract year. They're going to go to the draft next year. Linebacker, you got here's some sophomore names to know. Barrett Carter and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. So they're going to, light it up at backer. They lose James Skalski, but honestly, you're getting more star power at linebacker. And then at safety, Andrew Mabuka, who was a breakout player last year and all ACC player. So this defense is going to be ridiculous. Wes Goodwin comes in as new defensive coordinator. He's been with the program since 2018, but was previously with the program from 2009 to 2014 with Dabo. He had an NFL stint in the middle, but Clemson has a lot of work to do on offense. The defense will be going to be one of the best in the country. So my question is, who has the offense on the schedule to challenge Clemson's defense, where Clemson's offense is going to have to score to win? And I think you called out both teams. I think Miami has the opportunity to have that kind of offense. I think Notre Dame has the opportunity to have that kind of offense, especially at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. So I think that playing those games late will be tough. Like you mentioned, it's 2 of your last 4 games are against potentially really good offenses. So I like the over there. If they go 1-1 in those games, that gets you to 11-1 at least. That puts you back in the driver's seat of the ACC. back in control of the Atlantic. And I think Clemson's looking to Georgia last year and saying, you can do a lot if you have a dominant defense, and you can do a lot if your offense is, I mean, I think Georgia's was better than just good enough, but if your offense is just good enough and that defense is dominant, you can win a lot of football games still in 2022. So I'm a big believer in Clemson this year, 11-1 for me. And I like Clemson to be back in that ACC championship. All right. So we're both over on Clemson. Let's go to Raleigh. So the NC State Wolfpack coming off of a 9-win season, had one game canceled, bowl game canceled. So still have not had a 10-win season in NC State history. Does that change this year with a win total of 8.5?
Those are different questions. First of all, I do think that they have a really good shot at winning 10 games this year. I was looking through the schedule. So obviously the headline is going to be Devin Leary is back. Best NC State quarterback since Russell Wilson. Mike Glennon. No, they're all there. I think that NC State is feeling good where they are. I'm worried they might read their press clippings, but when I go through their schedule, you would think, again, I know how college football works, but you would think that at most they have 4 losable games when you go through, because it looks, I mean, Clemson, Wake Forest, North Carolina, and then throw in either like Virginia Tech or Louisville, maybe a Florida State as a dice roll. They should be better than all of them, but I'm just kind of like throwing some pins at the wall. I think that they have 2 likely losses, a third probable loss. So I think 9-3 is probably the most likely scenario for their schedule. But even if, I guess, yeah, because it's 8.5, I was like, even if they lose 4 games, no, they would go under at that point. But yeah, I think their most probable record with this team is 9-3. I do think that, North Carolina, which we'll get to them next week, is going to be improved. I think you really never know what Texas Tech is, just and that being a foreign team to them, they're going to have trouble with them. They should roll through UConn. But they should be better than everybody on this schedule except for Clemson. And then, Boston College and Wake and North Carolina are all like peers, but like if I had to bet today, I would think NC State in each of those games. So I'm going over. I'm going to say they go 9-3. I don't think they win 10 games, but yeah, give me the Wolfpack over.
I'm with you. I'm going over. I'm going to go one more step and say they win 10 games the first time in program history. So, and again, I think I'm going to talk a lot of similar points to Clemson here. The offense last year was not superb, despite Devin Leary being, a big name and him being praised a bunch as a quarterback. Like this offense in SP Plus last year, sorry, I had this pulled up, was ranked 39th. So, I mean, a top 40 offense, but it's not like they were, lighting teams
winning
up on
games
offense
because of the offense. Yeah.
Defense, though, is a top 15 defense, and this should be a top 10 defense this year. They bring back everybody. This will probably be the second best defense in the ACC, not just the Atlantic. This is a defense that only gave up 4.9 yards per play last year, 19.7 points in a game last year. They got injured. I mean, so they had a ton of injuries on defense last year, which allowed a lot of young guys to play, which at a program like NC State, typically they're at their best when like guys get developed, right? They're not going out and getting 5-star prospects that are playing early. These are, high 3 stars, low 4 stars that get developed and then play, right? So because of the injuries, a lot of young guys got to play. So they're going to have more depth on defense this year than they did last year. Corey Durden's going to highlight their defensive line. Again, with depth coming off of injuries last season. Peyton Wilson and Drake Thomas have both had all ACC seasons at linebacker. Tanner Ingles coming off of an all ACC season at safety. So a lot of names, and like, unlike a lot of years, again, they've got some top names, but they've got depth for the first time in a few years. So defense is going to be phenomenal. Offense needs to pick up the slack. So I think losing a player like Ekwonu, like at a program like NC State, that will not be just plug and play. Like he's probably taking care of one side of your offensive line at NC State. So Devin Leary, I agree, probably best quarterback since Russell Wilson. You got to replace you got to replace your backfield with some new faces. So I think if offense can maintain that top 40 pace that they did last year, defense improves to a top 10 defense. Again, I'm looking at your schedule and I'm like, all those peers you mentioned, who can light them up on offense? And probably Wake. Like Wake can. So I think that's a toss-up game. Louisville can. I think that's a toss-up game. Then you've got Clemson. You've got Florida State. You got North Carolina. I'm like, can you go 3-2 in those 5 games? Like just above 500. I think they can. I like Dave Doeren as a coach. So I'm going over. The thing is, though, if you're NC State, you got to be thinking a little bit about last year and saying, we should have won the Atlantic last year because you might go 10-2 this year. But Clemson might be back like we think they're going to be back. And so it's disappointing because NC State should have had their breakthrough year last year and won the division. And potentially, I think they would have had a better chance against Pitt than Wake did. But it's like you might win 10 games and Clemson's just going to be back and be daddy of the ACC again. So, but hey, first time to get 10 wins in program history. That's an accomplishment for NC State. So I'm going over. You're going over. Rooting for the Wolfpack.
They you mentioned depth. Just a shout out to Atlanta area kid MJ Morris is going to be their backup quarterback this year. So if Devin Leary, hopefully doesn't get hurt, but if something's going on, they do have a good backup quarterback. He's a high 4-star kid out of the Atlanta area Pace Academy. So he committed there over several schools he could have gone to that were a little higher profile. So, something to keep an eye on. They don't have NFL. Bailey Hockman backing him up. All right. Like they did.
Poor Bailey Hockman. All right. Let's go to Wake Forest. Hey, reigning ACC Atlantic Division champ. So their win total also set at 8.5. Daniel, are you going to make the same mistake that we did last year?
I really want to. Because now I feel like I'm estimating them properly, rather than overestimating or underestimating. I don't know. So Sam Hartman coming back is huge. This Dave Clawson offense, I mean, they're just lethal. No matter who he puts out there, I just feel like they're going to score and they're going to kind of just do their thing. And I don't think they're going to stop anybody defensively. So it's like that all gas, no brakes deal. But going through the schedule is tough because then you start getting I do think they'll beat VMI and Vanderbilt. Lord willing,
count out the fighting Barton Simmons.
They'll beat Liberty. I think the battle of Christian schools there. Because Wake Forest Baptist, of course. But going through, it's like, okay, they could lose to Army. They could lose to, Florida State, Clemson, Boston College. There's a lot of losable games on here. Do I think that they can catch lightning in a bottle 2 years in a row? I'm betting on the offense, really just putting pressure on everything else and causing a lot of issues for all these other teams. So I am going to say, I really wish this was 7.5 because I really think they're going to win 8 games. But we said 4-8 last year, I think.
5-7. 5-7. Let's give us some credit.
Okay. Oh gosh, we were close to being really bad on that though. I mean, we were still bad.
5-7 sounds a lot better than 4-8%.
It does sound better than 4-8. Oh man, we even said it. We felt bad about that pick. I feel
as
bad.
we were recording, I was like, if there's one pick I'm the least confident in, it's this one.
It's just tough to know with these guys. I do think out of conference is going to help them because I do think Vanderbilt stinks. I think that VMI, I mean, it's on the ACC network, so shout out. And then Liberty, they're catching Liberty at the right time. So, if they win a game they're not supposed to, even if they lose a couple that they're not supposed to, they can go over. But if Clemson's back, these wins are going to come from somewhere. I am back and forth. I'm going to go under. I'm going under.
Under.
I'm going to say they go 8-4.
8-4. All right. Well, I will double down on your under, and I'll go one more step and say they're going 7-5. So I came in here going, man, I was wrong about Wake Forest last year, and I'm going to double down. But here's the thing. I'm giving them 2 more wins. So I'm buying that they're improving. But to your question, they did catch lightning in a bottle. So can they do it twice in a row? No. Like,
that's very difficult because Clemson's down. Like, everybody is down.
Well, here's the thing. Let's talk about the positives. Offense. They return just about everybody. Sam Hartman is one of the best QBs in the conference, and there's a lot of good QBs in the ACC this year. So,
is he the best quarterback to be on that show, QB1? I mean, Justin Fields was on
talent?
No, not talent, because obviously it's Justin Fields.
I was like Fields,
but like we're talking about career. Like Jake Fromm, to a certain extent, had that for a while. Then Fields made it to a national championship game. So
career,
it's like, okay,
it's still Fields.
It's Hartman could be the guy if he makes it to an ACC championship this year. I'll say it.
All right, if he, you know what, sure, but it's not going to happen. So Hartman,
he's had the longest career. Well, Tate Martell technically was on more teams.
He's still transferring somewhere, man.
Yeah, he's still.
Christian Turner and A.T. Perry highlight. Skill players coming back. Offensive line played really well last year. They have 3 players that started all 14 games returning. So offense should be fun. The system's a lot of fun. If you get the chance, go to The Athletic, read Bruce Feldman's article about him coaching his son's youth football team and how they're running Wake Forest slow mesh and him dude, phenomenal article. So go read it at the Athletic. If you're a parent, it's a lot of fun as well. Football fan, even more fun. So anyway, but this is a team, we talked about it towards the end of the year when I picked North Carolina to beat Wake Forest. We talked about how bad North Carolina's defense was. And then I said, you know what's helpful to a bad North Carolina defense? How about a worse Wake Forest defense? This was a defense that ranked 92nd in SP Plus last year. And this is why I'm low in Wake Forest. They gave up 6 yards of play. They might have won 11 games, but in all 3 losses, they gave up 45 or more points. Everyone in the Atlantic is getting better. With the schedule this year, I do not see the offense bailing them out like as many times as they did last year. They won several one-score games last year where both teams were scoring in the 40s. Like when they got beat, it was teams that could score on them. And I'm looking at their schedule, and I'm like, NC State has a phenomenal defense. I think that Louisville's going to have a phenomenal offense. Clemson, we think, is going to be back and have a phenomenal defense. I think a much improved offense. Florida State, we'll talk about in a minute, but I'm going down the schedule, and I just don't see Wake Forest defense getting lucky like they did last year. And so there's a reason in Bill Connelly's FC Plus, he has them as the 49th best team power rated. So a top 50 team barely. A top 50 team barely is a team that goes 7-5. So I think they could go 8-4, but I don't see them winning 9 games. I feel very comfortable with this under at 8.5. So under for me as well on Wake Forest. Let's go down to Tallahassee, the Seminoles, Florida State. Their win total set at 6.5 in year 3 of Mike Norvell. So Daniel, where are you going with the Noles?
We some dogs. We ain't no puppies. Florida State. Yeah, so they don't have the greatest draw of non-con because they always obviously play Florida. Then you add in LSU this year. So
and Louisiana. Post Billy Napier, but still.
Yeah, still though, Louisiana, no picnic, all right? Especially when they lost to Jacksonville State last year. So
I mean, I'd watch out for what
Duquesne. Yeah, I know.
I almost
Skinny.
really
the Squesney. God bless you. So yeah, luckily, so that is it. It's interesting how their schedule lines up though, because they are playing week 0. So they're going to play Duquesne. They're going to put up a bunch of points, Lord willing, and look decent and get some stats looking good, because then they're not going to look good when they play LSU. My 10-win Tigers, LSU, that's the first of their 10 wins is that game. And then they have a
So
bye
we
week.
think.
So I do think that helps them, that they'll have a big win by beating Duquesne, and then they'll probably lose. They might give some fight, but then they have a bye week and they can kind of evaluate some things, and then they play Louisville at Louisville, and I do think that is a team that they really have to beat, because I do consider them a peer. Florida State has not run off from them yet in the division. There's a lot of losable games because I don't think that Florida State's floor has risen up like it should so far under Norvell. I think that's a talent issue, and it's a mentality issue. And I think that it's been over the course of several years, and it can happen from one game. It does, like, I think losing to Jacksonville State last year, if they would have beat them just like they should have, then I think that goes a long way in a mentality effort to win the games you're supposed to win. So that's an issue I have with Florida State. Is it 6.5?
6.5 is the win total.
6.5. Okay, because I do think it's big for them to get to a bowl game this year. In my heart, I really want to say they go 7-5 because I think that would be huge for them. But I'm looking at losses: Florida, Miami, Clemson, NC State, LSU. That's already 5 losses right there. And then all they have to do is drop one more. I think 6-6 most likely for them. So I'm going to go under on Florida State. I guess I should actually talk about the team a little bit. Jordan Travis as quarterback. He's their best athlete. I'm just not sure if he's best served doing that. But they don't really have somebody else that can come in and take the job from him. I don't know if he's going to make a living in the pocket. Not that he has to, but they're best when he's running the ball frequently. And then, it just losing some guys to the NFL last year. They've been big in the transfer market. Just this roster isn't quite where it needs to be to compete with all these teams right now.
8-4. So I'll disagree with you on a couple points. So one, I do think the floor is raised. So 3-6 in year 1, 5-7 in year 2. I do think the floor is coming up. They have replaced talent through the transfer portal, as well as they've recruited decent. So they're getting depth. I do think the floor has been raised. I mean, think about it. They win that ridiculous play against Jacksonville State last year. They go to a bowl game last year.
Right.
In year 2 of Mike Norvell. In what was like, I mean, he told the Boosters when he got there, this is like a 4-year before we're where you want to be. Like, you got to give me some time because Taggart ran this program into the ground. Jordan Travis, let's start there. So over the final 7 games, he threw for 1,300 yards, ran for 500, 17 touchdowns, 2 picks. Like, he got good whenever he knew he was the guy. Like, whenever there was no more like this Mackenzie Milton, Chuba Purdy, like which one's going to play, whenever all that was out the window and he was healthy, he lit it up. And now you have a full offseason of being the guy. Like, I think that is important. I think that there's not a statistic behind that, right? It's one of those feelings of like when you have the confidence of you don't have someone breathing down your back. I think offensive line needs to be improved. I think it does get improved this year. I do think they're the best whenever he's running the ball. That's part of Norvell's system, though. But I think if he's running effectively, they're going to be able to pass the ball effectively. It's a balanced offense. So defense, Only loss starter-wise, Jermaine Johnson. Everybody else is back. Now, big loss production-wise, but they built
ACC
up
Player
depth
of the
behind
Year.
him. Oh, yeah. But I'm like, that was a good defense last year. So defense, I don't think it's crazy if they're a top 15 defense in college football this year. Like, I think that's where it's funny because Florida State has had 3 offensive-minded head coaches since Bobby Bowden left, in Fisher, Taggart, and not Norvell. But it's the defense that's gotten really good under Norvell. That's been the thing that showed the most progress under him. So my bold prediction, I might tweet this to a friend of the show, Josh Pate, is that Florida State beats one of LSU and Florida. They win one of those 2 games. And I think it sets up nicely to win either because LSU you're going to get early, which I think is good because I think if LSU is going to get good, I think they're going to get good late. And then you play Florida late when you've gotten really good. So
And they may have given up if they've lost a few games.
Right. So that's my bold prediction is that I think they win one of those 2 games and then they go 5-3 in conference. So I think this is that next step forward is you go 3-6, 5-7. This is a big jump to go 8-4. And then I think by year 4, like he wanted, you have the opportunity, if you win 8 games, I think to compete for the Atlantic next year. I say compete for the Atlantic like Wake Forest did last year. So it all depends on Clemson. It's relative. But I'm high on Florida State. The out of conference is tough, like you mentioned, but bowl games should be the expectation this year. And as someone who believed in Norvell whenever they hired him, I am doubling down on my belief and saying 8-4 for Florida State. All right, let's go to up north, Boston College. One total also is at 6.5. Daniel, where are you going with the Eagles?
For this, I was kind of looking through and their schedule. I mean, it's no, I guess, picnic. Obviously they going through the ACC is what it is, but they do get Notre Dame as part of their allotment of games, and then you add in Rutgers, who is just they're not going to be a pushover now under Greg Schiano coming back. So I do think obviously Maine and UConn should be wins. But looking through this, there's just a lot of games that I could go either way on with them, and they're also at 6.5. I'm not mistaken. So
yeah.
I'm going to be that lame guy that's just going under on a bunch of people, but I'm going under on them. I think 6-6 would be a good season for them with this schedule. I think that they're going to be just kind of up against it. I like the direction the coach has been going. Phil Dracovic, quarterback, he's been solid so far. And he gets to return to Notre Dame because it's at Notre Dame when they play this year. So that'll be interesting. But I'm not crazy about them. I think they are what some teams we circle their loss. So, or their win. So,
yeah, BC is one of my wins got to come from somewhere. So I'm going under on Boston College. They went 6-5 in year 1. They went 6-6 in year 2. So they didn't take that year 2 jump. I'm not expecting a year 3 jump. Phil Dracovic's not been like incredible. I think big name. I think he had a couple big moments, but he's not been consistently what Boston College needs at quarterback. Their schedule's tough. I mean, when you end the season with NC State and Duke and back-to-back road games, that's tough. Syracuse right after that is fighting you for wins. Virginia Tech out of the Coastal is no fun. So 5-7, I think, is where I have them is 5-7 going under that 6.5 win total. So, I mean, this is a team that like offense and defense. I mean, returning production, 102nd on offense, 65th on defense. So 90th overall. And this is a team that does well whenever they return a lot of players. So yeah, I'm not buying. I don't see the win. I think the win total is kind of high, to be honest with you. I think this is a 5-7 team. And it could be worse. We'll see. But 5-7 is what I'll stick with for Boston College. Let's go to Louisville, a team that David Cobb says you should by Stockton. So their win total set at 5.5. I'm guessing he would go over the 5.5 win total. So Daniel, where are you going with the Cardinals?
Well, I think they split the games with UCF and USF. I'll let you imagine which way they go. But going through. So as far as the team itself, Malik Cunningham, I guess, coming back for his 8th year in this offense, I do think that he'll keep performing with Satterfield and everything like that. It's uncomfortable for me. And I go through their schedule. I mean, they're playing Pitt this year, and then obviously they play Kentucky every year in their non-con. James Madison's going to be no picnic. Some people may overlook that, but they're going to get a bunch of fight from them. And then obviously when they play Clemson, NC State, after their bye week, those last 6 games, I mean, they're probably going to go 1-5 in those games. So their wins are going to have to come from the beginning of the year. Do I think they're going to beat UCF? Probably not. I think that UCF's going to win because I'm a big UCF guy, obviously. Florida State, I think that they could go either way. Coin flip with Virginia, honestly. We'll dive into them next week. And then same with Boston College. I think they're both these are the teams that's this one's going to go either way. I could see each team winning by, 14 points. It's it just depends on who's having the day. Neither one of them are going to be overwhelming the other. And Louisville has kind of been a steady decline ever since Satterfield got there. He had a really good first season, I felt like, and then it hasn't built upon itself like we had hoped. So I do think he's somewhat in a hot seat position, especially after, what head coaching job did it was South Carolina. I almost said North Carolina.
Yeah, South Carolina.
He interviewed for South Carolina's job. So yeah, I think that he's definitely got some ground to make up. This one, 5.5, I'm going to go under.
Under. All right. I'll be the happy one again. And look, I drank the Kool-Aid and we had David on. I'm going over. And I mean, Bud Elliott did this. If I asked you to name the top, 25 offenses in college football last year, would you have ever named Louisville? And probably not, but they were a top 20 offense in college football last year. Bill Conley has them preseason ranked as the number 8 offense in the country. That's bold. And you know how I feel about Bill Conley and SP Plus. And this is a team that could see a big year 4 jump. So 8-5 in his first year, 4-7 in the COVID year, 6-7 last year with the loss in the bowl game. A lot of injuries on offense, but if they stay healthy, I mean, again, I'm looking at saying who is the defense that has shut their offense down, or who can go toe to toe with them? I think this is a team comparable to Wake Forest, except Louisville's defense was way better than Wake Forest defense last year. In returning production, they rank top 15 in the country, so 14th, 6th on offense. So they bring back everybody on an offense that was really, really good. Defense is 49th. So this is just a team that, I mean, I'm looking at their schedule. It's backloaded, right? So, I mean, there is a realistic chance that they go into the bye week undefeated. They got Syracuse, UCF, Florida State, USF, Boston College, Virginia. All of those games are winnable games. None of those I'm just automatic loss. You can win all of those games.
That's true.
After the bye, and this is when it gets tough, you got Pitt and Wake Forest, then you got James Madison, but then you end the season at Clemson, home against NC State, at Kentucky. So that's where it gets really, really tough. This is where I could see them dropping. I mean, they could easily drop 5 of those games after the bye, and it wouldn't shock me. It's just a tough schedule after the bye week. But if they can rack up a bunch of wins going into the bye week, get some confidence, they might still lose 3 or 4 of those games. But can you come out 8-4 at the end, maybe with a disappointing decline at the end of the season? I think so. So I'm going over the 5.5. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. Thank you, David Cobb, for feeding it to me. And I'll go 8-4 for the Louisville Cardinals. All right. Last for the ACC Atlantic in win total is the Syracuse Orange, sitting at 4.5. Look, Dino Babers, he's been there a minute. You still buying Dino Babers?
Last and least.
Oh yeah, last and least.
I think they're going to take care of Wagner, probably UConn. Someone's got to take these losses, all right, in the ACC. They get Notre Dame and Purdue this year. So I'm not feeling great about their non-con. And I think they're going to be kind of the punching bag in the division because someone has to be. I mean, I'm going to go under 4.5. I think is a good number as far as where they are, but I think 4 and 8 is probably pretty likely. I think 3 and 9 is more likely than 5 and 7. So give me the under.
I am with you on 3 and 9 is more likely than 5 and 7. I wrote down 2 bullet points for Syracuse. Here they are. Your non-con includes Notre Dame and Purdue. I'll add a third. I do not feel confident when I'm comparing Syracuse to any other team in the Atlantic Division. And I am fully out on Dino Babers. That's my main point is I'm just out.
I just like the Dino drop on cover 3.
Oh, I love it too.
That's
I'm just telling you, I'm out. I'm selling all my stock in Syracuse. And by all my stock, I mean 2 and 10. It's my predicted record this year.
That sounds right. Wagner and UConn, those are their 2 wins.
Yes. So here's Dino's record at Syracuse. All right, 4 and 8, 4 and 8, 10 and 3, 5 and 7, 1 and 10, 5 and 7. Which one to you sounds like the outlier? Do you remember when a few years ago? Do you remember a few years ago when Clemson at Syracuse? It was 2019. They got the ABC 8 p.m. kickoff because Syracuse had come off of a couple wins against Clemson, or 1 win and then like a close game.
Yeah,
they went 5 and 7. That was hilarious. But yeah, I'm selling all my Dino stock. So 2 and 10 for the Orange. Boom. 1 division down, 8 to go because the Big 12 doesn't have divisions. Pac-12
next year we're gonna have to figure out how to do this because a lot of conferences are going away from divisions.
So, I was like alphabetically, but in some conferences, one episode might be boring if you do alphabetically.
Yeah, we'll just mix it up a little bit.
We'll mix it up. Pac-12 we'll still do in divisions, but we'll just at the end pick our top 2 teams record-wise. So we'll still pick it by division. Maybe that's what we'll do when they get rid of divisions. We'll still pick it by division or something. We'll see. But next week we will be back with, if you've been listening to the pod for a minute, our favorite division in college football, the ACC Coastal. We love the Coastal. It is the most parity in college football is the ACC Coastal. So excited for that one next week. But be sure to follow us on social media at the Extra Point Pod. We'll be posting all these picks later on this week. You can follow him on Twitter at Deep South of Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with a K. That will do it for this edition of the Extra Point. He is Daniel. I'm Jacob.